Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and on today's episode, we are talking about marketing that might just give you a toothache. We are talking about the candy industry. We are going to talk about some stats and facts revolving the industry and the candy organization as a world and as a marketing world. But then I also have 8 different strategies for you to try out in your own marketing, even if you do not sell candy. For anyone who is new to the podcast, what we really like to do here is we pick industries or we pick companies, and we like to explore their marketing strategies and their advertising adventures and avenues to see if they could perhaps work with our company and our needs. At most, it could give you a brand new marketing strategy. It could totally help you revamp your brand and your business. And at the very least, it just gives you something to think about before you go to bed. So everyone, all that and more on today's episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And guys, happy Friday. We made it. It's terrific and wonderful. And I don't know about you guys, but the week after a long weekend always seems so much longer than it actually was. And I don't know what it was this week, if there was something in the air. It is still definitely the coronavirus season. But man, every day it just felt like it was crawling through and it got stressful. I'm not going to lie, but do you want to know how I deal with my stress? I listen to podcasts, and when I listen to a podcast I do this hilarious thing called subscribing. And if you want to also be a part of the hilarious joke, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to this podcast, because it's actually not funny at all. It helps me out quite a bit knowing if you like the show and if you're interested in the content we are creating. And gosh, guys, I'm afraid I sound so desperate at the beginning of every episode when I ask, like, hey, have you subscribed yet? Can you subscribe now? Will you subscribe later? But know what? I am fine with being the clingy girl who won't leave you alone after you went on one date with her, as long as it pushes you in the right direction of subscribing. Honestly, it just helps us out so much to know if you're listening. That is really all we use that information for. It is to support us. It is to support the podcast, and it is to support me so that I can continue making this really great content for you. And if you want me to tailor the content for you so that you're actually getting more out of it than you're already getting, then please write it in the review down below. Reach out through social media. Let me know what you want me to talk about, because I will gladly talk about it. I would love to get suggestions. At the beginning of every week, I always record these all just one long recording day. And gosh, guys, coming up with 30 to 1 hour podcast ideas isn't always as easy as pie. So if you have a topic, please give it to me. I love getting ideas. Help me out. Send me a topic. I would just love to make this more of a community where we talk and we exchange ideas and we benefit from each other's knowledge and marketing skills. So that's really what I want. I'm sure that is what you want too. So if you want to be a part of a community, if you want to be on the podcast, if you want me to talk about something on the podcast, if you have a business that wants to sponsor the podcast, please reach out, because we'd really, really love to hear from you. So now let's get into today's podcast episode, where we are talking about the candy industry. So to start out, let's talk about some stats and facts about the sweet industry. Number 1, the candy industry generates around $35 billion in revenues at a retail level each year in the United States. Fact number 2, Hershey's currently hold 43.8% market share on chocolate products sold at the retail level in the United States. So before in fact number 1, when we learned that it was $35 billion at a retail level, 43.8% of that goes towards Hershey's. Now, I'm not going to lie. I don't like Hershey's. I don't like the candy bars that much. I'm definitely more of a Milky Way girl or a Mars bar, some M&Ms. But clearly Hershey's, they know what they're doing, at least from a marketing standpoint. So fact number 3 is also about that chocolate company Hershey's, because they also hold a leading share of overall candy market in the U.S., which is responsible for 30% of the total sales. Again, they are just cornering this market. And I'll be honest, it makes sense. You go into any Walmart, drugstore, candy store, you are going to see Hershey's everywhere. They have like every type of candy you can like even imagine. So it's not unreasonable to think that they are responsible for 30% of the total sales for the candy market. But let's step away from the big Hershey chocolate giant for a second, because number 4, Mars currently holds 28.9% of the shares of the U.S. of the candy market. So Mars is catching up to you guys. Hershey's, watch your back for those Mars bars. I hear they're out of this world. Okay, I'll go home now. Goodbye, everyone. I'm kidding. All right. Number 5, sales of M&Ms in the United States totaled $688.7 million in 2016. Fact number 6, the sales of retail chocolate in the United States from count lines totaled $6.39 billion in 2016. Fact number 7, about 20% of Americans say they have purchased candy that is seasonal. So this is really important and something to keep in mind for later in the episode where we talk about strategies. A huge portion of the candy market is due to it being a seasonal product. As weird as that sounds, because you're like, hey, Mackenzie Jakewish, I could run downstairs right now to my deli and get any kind of chocolate bar I want. What do you mean it's seasonal? What you don't understand is that, maybe you do understand it. I don't want to belittle your knowledge. Maybe you do know this. How they advertise for these candy bars is extremely seasonal. So M&M's is huge around Halloween, and Hershey Kisses are huge around Valentine's Day, but also they do a Christmas spot. They really do shine out when it comes to the seasonal marketing for the candy industry. So, fact number 8, candy sales in Western Europe totaled more than $52.8 billion in 2016. Fact number 9, the global retail sales of candy products reached $186 billion in 2017. So, quite the jump there between 2016 and 2017 for sure. It's just to show you that this industry is always growing and always changing, which is very similar to their marketing, that they constantly have to put in work and effort and time so that their marketing stays ahead of the game and is current and is moving as quickly as their product is. Since 2011, GMO-free candies have doubled in sales, growing from $29 million in revenue to $72 million by 2014. So this is also a very important thing to keep in mind when we talk about strategies coming up next, is that because trends in the marketplace definitely do dictate how they are going to market their products, because it is also dictating which products are selling and which industries and which revenues in the industry are growing more than others. So fact number 12, about 80% of adults in the United States say they eat chocolate candies at a regular basis. Guys, I am an adult and I have a Milky Way in my freezer and it has been there for about 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie to you, I do indulge in the occasional sweet treat. But what I would love to hear is that if this stat is telling me 80% of adults in the U.S. do, if you are in the U.S., even if you are not, please write in the review down below or reach out through social media. letting me know if you're part of this 80%. I would love, love, love to hear your thoughts on it. If you think this is an accurate representation of how people eat in the States or candy habits in the States, I would really love to hear your thoughts. Fact number 13. Premium chocolates control an 18% market share of total dollar sales for chocolate segment of candy industries in the United States. Fact number 14. From 2007 to 2014, the price index for chewing gum and candies rose 23%. So guys, what was happening over those 7 years? That is crazy. That is something that when you're taking a look at an industry like this one, or, you know, in the previous podcast, we talked about video game marketing, it's really important to look for patterns like that. And if you're looking at your own data, look out for patterns like that. That way you can really keep track of maybe something really great happened in those 7 years. Maybe something bad happened in the world, but it rose candy sales. So it's important to pay attention to big jumps like that, time gaps like that, and just overall data patterns such as that one. Fact number 15, organic candies provide $61 million to boost global revenue figures for the candy industry. Again, guys, this is another great example of showing how the industry really is controlled by trends and what people are doing currently. And they can't always do the same thing. The same recipe that they were doing in the 1950s isn't going to sell to mothers who are buying their children candy in 2020. It's just not. So they always do have to move and pivot their marketing strategies. Every brand, even Hershey's, who controls 43% of the market, they have to be ready to pivot and they have to be ready to change their strategy. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck. So if you take anything away from tonight's podcast, let it be that. Make sure you are aware of what your marketing strategy is, and also be aware that if you want to stick around for a long time, if you want to make big moves in the industry, you may need to learn how to pivot. And that is true even if you are not in the candy industry. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take a break from the podcast. But when we come back, I have our first couple of strategies for you that we'll be discussing. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you again. Black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on tonight's episode, we are talking about some pretty sweet marketing. We are talking about the candy industry, and let me tell you right now, if you are a fan of food, if you are a fan of the food industry, I might know a podcast that might be perfect for you. In fact, if you are a fan of any industry at all, if you are a hobbyist in the beauty world, if you love social media, if you love wrestling, if you love sports, then I know the perfect place for you. It is a little town I like to visit called the GSMC Podcast Network. They host so many amazing and incredible podcasts, just like the one you are currently listening to. We have a variety of content, and we are working so hard to push out quality content for you 3 times a week. Some podcasts have a host for every day of the week. I only do 3 episodes, but some podcasts have Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and also Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you can be in full trust that we got your back. We are going to be here 24/7 to help you out with whatever you need. If you want to listen about lifestyle, if you want to listen about beauty, if you want to listen about wrestling and sports, we have a podcast for you, and we are putting out new content all the time. So subscribe, rate, review, and enjoy. Right now, I really, really love the beauty podcast, but also I'm a old fan of the book podcast. I've been listening to that one for a long time before I was even a host of this podcast. So definitely head over to our network, check out some of our other amazing podcasts, and then come back here and tell me which ones you're really loving, because I would like some recommendations. But for now, let's pop back into today's episode and talk about some marketing strategies you can use in your marketing. Again, let me preface this. You do not need to host, or you do not need to run a candy industry to get something from this podcast. I am promising you right now, all of the strategies we will talk about can relate to your business, even if you don't make chocolate. But let me tell you, if you do make chocolate, let me know. Slide into my DMs, Mackenzie_Jaquish, because I could use some chocolate right now. I'm not gonna lie. But for now, let's stop talking about chocolate, because I'm going to get hungry, I'm going to get distracted, and I won't be able to finish this episode. For now, let's jump back in and talk about our first strategy, which is partnerships. And partnerships is something that I talk about a lot on the podcast. It's definitely not unique to the candy industry, but it is something that you see the candy industry do quite a bit. It is networking, it is connecting, it is creating content that works with other people's content. If your product works really, really well with another product, and you know that person, you know that company, you can trust them to split everything equally, then why not create a partnership, even if it is just seasonally? You could do a Valentine's Day giveaway where maybe they do flowers and you do food if you're a restaurant. Maybe if you make coffee and they make soap, then you make the perfect Mother's Day gift basket. But basically, working with partnerships gives both of you so much opportunity for content and another way to reach a brand new audience that you were not connected to before. Because maybe the soap audience had no idea you made coffee, and now even if the soap audience, even if the woman who makes the soap only had 200 followers, that is 200 more people now who will know your name who didn't before. Every little bit counts, guys. So find your partner. And again, work with them once to try it out. Do not sign a 5-year contract with your partner, but find a partner that works really well. Test it out a few times. And then again, you never have to sign a 5-year contract, but keep them in your back pocket for that random moment if you have a whole bunch of decaffeinated beans and they're selling disinfectant soap, and you know that there are just a whole bunch of people in the world who could really love decaf coffee and disinfectant soap, and you could make some sort of weird, healthy gift basket together. So it's important to keep those relationships strong and keep them going as well. Number 2, vibrant packaging. Guys, when it comes to the candy industry, and unfortunately when it comes to a lot of industries, it isn't so much the product as it is what the product comes in. People really, really enjoy, especially in the candy industry, but again, this is true in every industry, vibrant packaging that reaches out to them and says, buy me, I'm the one you want, you should buy me, not that other guy, he's just yellow, I'm red. So it doesn't matter if the yellow candy tastes better, if the red candy looks better, it's going to get bought in and eaten and then repurchased way more times than the yellow. You need to make packaging decisions that aren't just economically smart, although they should be. Do not go spending all your money on packaging, but make sure they do reflect your brand and that they're eye-catching and that they're easy to work with, they're fun to work with, and they're genuinely a fun part of the product because it's not just the wrapping, it is also part of what you're selling. So if you have to spend a little bit more on packaging, then you can put your product at a little bit of a higher price range because if it looks fancy, people will pay more money for it. Number 3, customer awareness. Customer awareness is huge, again, in a lot of industries, but when you think about it in the candy industry, it's really important because they need to know if they're selling to moms, if they're selling to children, if they're selling to teenagers, if they're selling to a bridal party, if they're selling for Valentine's Day. Being aware of who your customer is and what they want and what they actually need is so important when it comes to creating your marketing strategies because this way you are able to take a look at your packaging and the partnerships that you have so that you can create a perfect campaign for those customers. But you can't create that campaign if you're totally unaware of who they are. So customer awareness, move that strategy up to number 1 because it is so critical and so important for when you are creating your marketing strategies and your marketing campaigns. Number 4 is absolutely one of my favorites. I absolutely love suggesting this for you guys, and it is definitely huge in the candy industry, but it is contest. Who doesn't love a good contest? Honestly, you can do them online for super cheap. You could do them at the farmer's market. You could do them on your Facebook page. You could do them on your website. You could do them over the phone if you wanted. They are so easy. They're so cheap to do. All you have to do is give away that product that isn't selling. They're going to give you huge exposure and they're going to help you make new customers, retain old customers, get higher engagement on your social media, and also just have a good time coming up with fun contest ideas. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take another break from the podcast, but when we come back, I have a couple more marketing strategies for you straight from the candy machine. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness, or or enter the promo code Health and Wellness on their website, then our Health and Wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code Health and Wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and on today's episode, we are talking about candy. I know, it's so exciting. I'm excited for this podcast episode and I hope you are as well. I really love doing this podcast and I really hope you love listening to it. And if you do love listening to it, yes, I already asked once this podcast, but hey, don't blame a girl for trying. Could you please, pretty please, subscribe? It's so easy. It's one button. Click, done, whatever. I'm happy. You're happy. You get amazing content. I get to keep creating amazing content. Everybody wins. So why not just subscribe? Please just do it and I'll never talk about it again. I promise. So on today's episode, we have been talking about the candy industry and we've been taking a look at it from a very critical marketing strategy approach of, first of all, we looked at the industry stats and facts. We got an idea of who they are selling it to, how they are selling it, and how much money they are making. I think it's really important to examine those types of stats and facts when we're looking at an industry. That way we get a good baseline of what we're actually looking at and what we're actually interacting with. And that is so important when it comes to examining any type of industry. Then before the break, I gave you 4 different strategies that I do think, even if you don't work in a candy shop, even if you are not making suckers on Etsy or bubblegum on Instagram, these strategies can help you. So in case you missed it, number 1 was partnerships, which is basically a fancy way of saying networking, or maybe networking is a fancy way of saying partnerships, but find someone whose business model aligns with yours. They are selling a similar product, or you could find a way to make the products mesh really well together. I gave the example of soap and coffee, or flowers and food, or flowers and wine, or jewelry and flowers, or jewelry and wine. There are just so many endless opportunities for you, but I do recommend that if you are getting involved with a partnership, then you test it out a few times first before you make anything permanent, before you make any decisions you can't unmake easily. So do a few giveaways together, maybe run a few contests, and then try the partnership out on a strictly a trial basis. That way you both can back out if you need to. Number 2, vibrant packaging. Don't judge a book by its cover, but judge a candy based on its packaging. This was really talking about how even if you need to spend a little bit more money on your packaging, you can then charge the customer a little bit more for the product because the packaging is actually a part of the product, as crazy as that seems, because they'll probably tear it off and throw it in the garbage. But another way to look at it is before they tear it off, what are they going to do? they're going to take a photo of it, and if it's cute enough, it'll get posted on Instagram and you will get tagged. So do not underestimate the power of some vibrant packaging. Number 3, customer awareness. You need to know who you're selling to before you sell anything. End of discussion. Number 4, my absolute favorite, it's so important and it's so much fun, is contests. Have fun with it. Again, combine the partnerships, do vibrant marketing. It's going to get you more attention on social media. It's going to get you a higher engagement level. You're going to get new customers. You're going to retain old customers. It's a win-win-win all around, guys. So if you're not currently doing a contest or you've never done a contest, get on this ship, baby, because we're not taking off anytime soon. But we're having fun in the water and we're all catching some fish as we wait for you to join. And by the way, what I mean by that is that we're not going to leave without you. You're not going to miss the boat on doing contests. Like, you could listen to this podcast 5 years after it was recorded, and trust me, contests are still going to be a cool thing to do. So don't sweat it if you don't jump on the boat right away. So let's get into some more strategies. Number 5, buying habits of the people who are purchasing your product. So this is very similar to customer awareness, but a slightly different, a hair, a smidge, a millisecond of a difference, because you need to know if they stopped buying the yellow candy, you need to know why. And you need to know why they started buying the red. If they stopped buying the yellow altogether, that's a huge question you need to ask. That's a huge problem you need to deal with. But if they started buying the red instead, then what you need to look at is, okay, what is the red doing that the yellow isn't, that maybe I need to fix on the yellow, or maybe I need to put less money into the yellow and put it all into the red. So it's keeping track of buying patterns and buying habits. This way you are better able to focus and pivot your marketing as your customers pivot. Number 6, have an add-on. This is a great opportunity for one. Candy industries do this all the time, but it's a great opportunity for you to, again, work with people in your industry or work with people in your community. It does not necessarily have to be a partnership, but say you know a company is about to go out of business and you get a bunch of their coupons and then you add the coupon onto your coffee. And honestly, it's not going to bring you immediate sales, but it is going to show that you are a part of the community, you are a part of the industry, and you are here to stay. It is making yourself known to the community. Number 7, another great way to get yourself known to the community is to host a media event. Now, this is definitely a more pricey strategy, but trust me, guys, it is so worth it. Host a get-together, have your product, your brand, your logo everywhere. You want when people to walk in to see Natalie's Beans, that's the coffee industry I just made up, you want the logo for Natalie's Beans to look like it threw up in the room. It is everywhere. If they pick up something to drink, boom, the logo slapped on the glass and the straw and the lid and the coaster. It's everywhere. I used to work promotions for a radio company, and my boss would always say, if I walk into that bar and I don't see our radio logo on everybody's coaster in front of everybody's face 24/7, you have not done your job correctly. So you need to go big or go home, because here's the thing, it might seem really big, it might seem obnoxious to you, but hosting a media event is very expensive, so you want to make sure that every photo they take that night has your logo in the background or is the main focus of the photo. A really great example of this that isn't quite the same is, I'm sure a lot of you have seen influencers take those very expensive trips with big brand companies, and then they go there and they have to vlog it all the time and they have to talk about it all the time. But whenever they do, Tarte Cosmetics does this a lot actually, so they'll fly a bunch of influencers out to Bora Bora. But when you watch those vlogs, everywhere in the hotel room is a big Tarte Cosmetics sign, and the influencers all have to wear the makeup and they have to wear clothing, and there are rules that go with it. But the point is, any content that is captured at your media event, at Tarte Cosmetics, holiday vacations they're taking these influencers on, it is all giving them exposure. Number 8, and our final one, is to plan your ideas seasonally. We talked about this at the top of the podcast because really it is the biggest one in the candy industry. This doesn't mean you have to only be around for one season. It doesn't mean you have to establish yourself as being, oh, we're only a Christmas product or we are only a Thanksgiving product. No, it just means that you know how to pivot your marketing strategy so that it looks like you are a Thanksgiving product, but then a month later you are a Halloween product. Oh, sorry, those are Canadian dates, guys. I'm sorry. You pivoted so that it looks like you are a Christmas candy or a Christmas product, and then you're a Valentine's Day one. You can pivot and change as your market pivots and changes. That way, no matter what season it is, you are the focus of it. I really hope those 8 strategies and all the stats and facts that we talked about on today's episode helped you and that you got some sort of novel advice or strategies or ideas from this. If you did, please let me know by writing a review down below, or again, reach out through social media because I'd love to hear from you and I'd love to connect with you. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast episode next week. I hope you have a wonderful evening, a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.